Welcome in, everybody. We're diving deep today into something that has the financial world buzzing a potential U.S. Bitcoin reserve.
It really does feel like this idea has gone from something people were whispering about to a real possibility that folks are openly discussing and debating.
Yeah, and the buzz is undeniable.
Absolutely.
And the betting markets seem to agree. Cointelegraph says the odds of Trump creating a Bitcoin reserve in 2026 are going through the roof.
Really?
Yeah. Kalshi bettors are putting the odds at almost 70%, so it seems like people are really putting their money where their mouth is on this one.
That's wild. It's not just speculation, though, right?
Right.
I mean, Crypto Daily even mentions that Marathon Digital, the big mining company, went so far as to mine a Trump 47 block to kind of commemorate this whole thing. I
Yeah.
mean, it's a gesture, sure, but it shows you how much anticipation there is, at least in some corners of the crypto world.
Yeah, they see this as a potential turning point. Okay, so we've got people betting on it, miners celebrating it, but what's fueling this wave of optimism? Is there something concrete behind it, or is it just hype?
Well, a lot of our sources, like Cointelegraph and Crypto Daily, they point to Trump's stance on crypto.
Okay.
It's been pretty positive, at least on the surface, and that seems to be a big factor. In fact, Dan Tapiero,
Oh, yeah.
the macro investor, he's predicting a $10 trillion crypto market by 2025.
Wow.
And he thinks pro-business policies are going to be the fuel for that. He even links this potential growth to a new era for crypto, maybe even connecting it to the DOGE initiative at a sign of where things are heading.
We should be clear, though, we're just reporting what these sources are saying, not endorsing any particular initiative or candidate.
Right, of course, just laying out the landscape.
Exactly, the landscape.
Yeah.
It feels like a whole new world is opening up.
It does.
But this isn't just a federal thing, is it? What's happening at the state level?
Good point. This momentum is trickling down. Crypto Daily and Crypto Slate both mention that Wyoming and Massachusetts are actually considering bills to allow state investments in Bitcoin.
Really?
Yeah, and get this. Wyoming's bill even mentions Bitcoin loans.
Whoa.
Like, imagine getting a loan from the state of Wyoming in Bitcoin.
That's a headline I didn't expect to see today.
All right.
Okay, so we've got the betting odds, we've got Trump's stance, and now states getting in on the action.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. It really paints a picture of this potential seismic shift in the U.S. financial landscape. But let's be real, there are always two sides to every story. What are the voices of caution saying amidst all this optimism?
Well, you always have to look at both sides.
Right.
I mean, Crypto Slate brought up a study by River that estimated over $1.5 billion in Bitcoin has already been lost because of self-custody issues.
Oof, that's a lot of Bitcoin.
Right. It makes you wonder about the security and the practicality of something as big as a national reserve.
Yeah, if individuals are struggling to keep their Bitcoin safe, imagine
Serious.
the challenges at a national level.
It's a whole different ballgame.
It really makes you think.
Definitely.
Okay, so that's a pretty sobering thought.
Yeah.
Are there any other concerns we should be aware of?
Well, even some of the more bullish predictions have a bit of caution baked in.
Okay.
For example, Cointelegraph reports that Phil, the analyst, he's predicting Bitcoin hitting $180,000 in 2025.
Wow.
But they also mentioned other analysts who are a lot more cautious, talking about a potential reversal.
Interesting.
Yeah. And they even point out that the link between Bitcoin's price and VC investment actually broke down in 2024.
Huh.
So it's getting more complex. Price movements might not always be driven by just pure speculation anymore.
So it's not just a straight shot to the moon?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay, I like the honesty. It seems like there are bumps in the road, maybe even some detours we can't predict.
For sure.
But that's what makes this whole thing so fascinating, right? It's unpredictable, it's full of potential, but also potential pitfalls.
Absolutely.
So let's play a little game of what if. Let's say a U.S. Bitcoin reserve does become a reality. What could that actually mean? What are the implications beyond just the price of Bitcoin?
Now we're getting to the heart of it.
Right.
Well, Crypto Daily pointed out that Thailand is trying to become a crypto hub,
Okay.
and they're doing it by allowing Bitcoin ETFs.
Interesting.
Could the U.S. be thinking along those same lines?
It makes you wonder.
It does. Would a reserve just be about boosting Bitcoin's price? Or are there bigger economic goals, maybe even geopolitical goals, at play here?
That's a great question. It seems like everyone's focused on the immediate impact. Will Bitcoin go up or down?
Right, right.
But you're right, there's a much bigger picture here.
There is.
What role could Bitcoin play in the global financial system if major economies like the U.S. start adding it to their reserves?
Now you're asking the really big question.
Oh, I know, right? It's mind-blowing to think about.
It is.
This isn't just about Bitcoin, it's about the future of finance itself.
Yeah.
And for our listeners, how might this affect your investment decisions, your understanding of how the world works, financially speaking? It's a lot to consider.
It is a lot to consider.
And speaking of things to consider, let's not forget about the SEC.
Oh, right. Of course. The big elephant in the room.
Yeah,
They've been a major force in the crypto world.
Yep.
And their stance could make or break this whole Bitcoin reserve idea.
No kidding. Cointelegraph even reported on that lawsuit against Ripple over XRP.
Right. And the charges against Digital Currency Group, can't forget about those.
Right, for allegedly misleading investors.
Yeah, it just shows how much the SEC is focusing on protecting investors
Yeah.
and really scrutinizing everything that's happening in crypto.
It's a high-stakes game, for sure.
It is. And with Gary Gensler leaving the SEC, everyone's wondering what's next.
Totally.
Cointelegraph mentioned that some people think the new administration might be more open to crypto,
Oh, interesting.
but others are more skeptical. They think things will stay pretty much the same.
It's like we're waiting for the other shoe to drop. Okay, so before we get too deep into the weeds of regulation,
Good idea.
let's just take a step back and recap what we've learned so far.
Okay, sounds good.
We've seen this surge of optimism about a U.S. Bitcoin reserve, fueled by a few things: Trump's stance, what's happening at the state level, and this feeling that crypto is really becoming mainstream.
Yeah, the momentum is definitely building.
It is. But we've also highlighted some contrasting views, right? Those
Mhm.
potential risks, the uncertainty, and the huge role that regulations are going to play in all of this.
It's a complex landscape, that's for sure.
It is, but I think we've laid a good foundation for understanding what's really going on here.
I agree.
All right, let's take a quick break to gather our thoughts.
Sounds good.
And then we'll come back to explore these implications in more detail, both for the world at large and for you, our listeners.
Can't wait. This is where it gets really interesting.
Stay with us. Okay, we're back and ready to dig deeper into what a U.S. Bitcoin reserve could actually mean for, well, everyone.
It's almost like we're watching this chess match play out, between the old way of doing things, traditional finance,
Right.
and this new wave of crypto disruption.
I like that analogy. It's like this tension between centralized control and this decentralized new world.
Exactly. And you see it everywhere, right? The regulatory pushback, the debates about whether it's stable enough,
Yeah.
even the concerns about security, fraud, all that.
But it's not a simple black and white situation, is it?
Not at all.
We're seeing signs that these two worlds are starting to blend together, right? It's not just one versus the other.
That's a good point. Think about those state-level initiatives we talked about, Wyoming, Massachusetts.
Right.
They're exploring Bitcoin investments, even loans. That tells me there's a more nuanced dynamic at play here.
Yeah, it's not just acceptance or rejection. It's like they're figuring out how to adapt, maybe even how to benefit from each other.
Exactly. It's like a dance.
A dance, I like that.
Yeah, they're trying to figure out the steps.
And speaking of steps, that example from Crypto Daily about Thailand, embracing those Bitcoin ETFs
Oh, right.
in their bid to become a crypto hub.
It's like they're saying, we can't ignore this thing, so let's figure out how to use it to our advantage.
Pragmatic. Right.
Exactly. It's like, trying to tame a wild horse. You don't just try to break its spirit. You got to channel that power.
I
I love that. Okay, so back to the U.S. The potential strategy with this Bitcoin reserve.
Yeah.
Is it really GZE about making money off Bitcoin's rise, or is there something more strategic happening here?
Some analysts think it could be a power move, on the global stage.
Oh, interesting.
Like a way to counter other countries, especially the ones looking at central bank digital currencies. It's like a high-stakes poker game. Everyone's trying to get an edge.
So the U.S. holding Bitcoin would be like, we're in the game, we're a player.
Exactly. But that creates a whole new set of challenges, doesn't it? For sure. What about the dollar? Global trade. Could this even lead to a digital arms race with everyone scrambling to get their own crypto reserves?
It's possible. We're talking about huge EE implications here, stuff that's hard to wrap your head around.
I know, right? It's like we're trying to predict the weather in a completely new climate system. It's uncharted territory.
It is. It really
Yeah.
is. The key is to try to understand the forces at play, Look at the information we have and develop your own perspective.
Informed perspective.
Yes, exactly.
Because one thing's for sure, this crypto space is anything but predictable.
Oh, tell me about it.
And speaking of unpredictable, we can't forget about the human factor.
Oh, right, of course.
Remember that study from CryptoSlate, the one about all the Bitcoin that's been lost because of self-custody issues?
Yeah, that was a big one.
It just highlights how important education and understanding are. If people are going to be confident navigating this new world, they need to feel comfortable and secure, you know? It's not just about the tech itself, it's about creating a culture of responsible participation.
Couldn't agree more. You got to build that foundation of knowledge.
Okay, so after all of this, what are our listeners supposed to take away from all of this?
Stay curious, stay informed, and don't just blindly follow the hype or dismiss it completely. Do your own research, ask your own questions. Don't be afraid to challenge the assumptions people are making.
This is literally the future of finance being written in real time, right before our eyes.
It is, and you have the opportunity to be a part of it. You know, your decisions matter.
It's not just an abstract concept. This is stuff that could impact our lives, our money, everything.
You got it. This isn't just about Bitcoin. This is about the entire system changing, potentially.
Now, we've talked a lot about the risks, the challenges, all that. But what about the potential benefits? Why are some people so excited about this possibility? What are they hoping to achieve?
Okay, yeah, let's flip the script a little bit.
Right, let's look at the other side of the coin.
One of the biggest arguments you hear is that Bitcoin could be a hedge against inflation. You know,
okay.
Unlike regular currencies, which governments can manipulate, Bitcoin's supply is limited.
Right.
And because it's decentralized, it's harder to mess with.
So in a world where inflation is a big worry for a lot of people, Bitcoin offers what, like a safe haven?
Exactly. A way to protect their wealth, potentially.
Like a life raft in a sea of economic uncertainty.
That's a great way to put it. And we've seen this play out, right? El Salvador adopted Bitcoin as legal tender, partly to combat inflation and give their citizens more financial power.
It was a bold move, that's for sure.
It was.
It sparked a lot of debate.
It did. But it shows you that some governments are seriously considering Bitcoin as a tool for economic change.
So beyond inflation, what other benefits are people hoping to see?
Well, a lot of folks talk about faster and cheaper cross-border payments.
Oh, okay.
The traditional systems are slow, they're expensive, and they can be really difficult for people in developing countries to access. Bitcoin could change all that. Near instant transactions, low fees. It's like upgrading from a horse and buggy to a bullet train.
I can see how that would be a game changer for folks who rely on remittances or anyone who needs to send money internationally.
Yeah, it opens up a lot of possibilities.
A whole new world.
Exactly. And then there's the whole innovation angle.
Oh, right.
A U.S. Bitcoin reserve could encourage businesses, entrepreneurs, to build new stuff on blockchain technology, create a whole ecosystem.
Like planting a seed that could grow into a whole new forest of financial innovation.
Exactly. But we got to be real. These are just potential benefits, right?
Of course.
There's no guarantee that any of this will actually happen.
Yeah.
And we have to be realistic about the challenges along the way.
Absolutely. It's a balance, right? Acknowledging the potential, but also the risks.
Exactly. But there's a genuine belief out there that Bitcoin could lead to a more stable, more inclusive, more innovative financial system.
It's a powerful vision. It really is.
It is. But as we said, there are risks too, challenges that we can't ignore.
Right. And we need to approach this carefully with strong security and clear regulations.
Yes, absolutely. It's like building a bridge, you know? You need a solid foundation to support all that weight.
Okay, so lots to consider.
There is.
It's this push and pull between the potential and the risks, the old way and the new.
It is. It's exciting.
It is exciting, but also overwhelming, especially for folks who are new to all this.
I understand that. It can be a lot to take in, and that's why these conversations are so important, you know?
Absolutely.
To shed light on how complex it is, explore different viewpoints, encourage people to think critically. We want to help people navigate this new world and make good decisions for their financial future.
Seb's all said. Now let's turn our attention to the regulatory landscape, where the ideals of crypto meet the reality of the current financial system.
All right, let's dive in. Regulation is key to understanding if a Bitcoin reserve is even feasible and what impact it might have.
Exactly. We have to look closely at the SEC, what they've done, and how they might influence what happens next.
Absolutely. I think it's worth revisiting those cases we mentioned, the Ripple case, the Digital Currency Group case, you know, to really get into the details of how the SEC is approaching all this.
The Ripple case is a big one because it gets to the heart of what a security, even IS, in the crypto world.
That's right.
The SEC says XRP was sold as an unregistered security.
Right.
But Ripple argues that XRP is a currency, so it shouldn't be subject to the same rules.
That's a key distinction, right?
It is. Because if the SEC decides something is a security, that triggers all these regulatory requirements that could really stifle innovation.
It's like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. It just doesn't work.
Exactly. And whatever happens with Ripple could set a precedent for how other cryptocurrencies are regulated.
Oh, for sure.
Which, of course, has big implications for this whole Bitcoin reserve idea.
Huge implications, yeah.
Now, that digital currency group case is interesting because it's about misleading investors.
Right.
The SEC claims that DCG and their former CEO, Michael Morrow, basically weren't honest about the risks involved.
It's all about investor protection. The SEC wants to make sure crypto companies are playing by the rules.
Transparency, accountability, all that.
Exactly. Especially if we're talking about something as big as a Bitcoin reserve. You need that foundation of trust.
It's like building a house on a shaky foundation. The whole thing could collapse.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And of course, with Gary Gensler leaving the SEC, everyone's wondering, what's next?
Yeah. What direction will they take? Will they be tougher on crypto or more lenient? It's a big question mark.
Cointelegraph mentioned that some people think the new administration will be more open to crypto.
It's possible.
But others are skeptical.
Yeah, they think it'll be business as usual.
It's a wait-and-see situation, right?
It is, like waiting to see which way the wind will blow.
It could push the industry forward or hold it back.
That's a good way to put it. We're in uncharted territory here, and there are bound to be surprises along the way.
Now let's zoom out a bit and think about the global implications. We've talked about this potential power play on the world stage.
Yeah.
But how might other countries react if the U.S. actually does this?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Yeah. There's no easy answer. It really depends on each country's situation, their view of crypto, their relationship with the U.S.
Yes, so many factors.
It's like dropping a pebble in a pond. The ripples will spread out in all directions and create all sorts of effects.
Some countries, the ones that are already into crypto, they might see it as a validation.
Like, hey, we were right.
Exactly. And they might follow suit, creating this domino effect that could reshape the whole financial landscape.
It's like a chain reaction. One thing leads to another.
But others might see it as a threat, right?
Oh, for sure.
Especially the ones that are wary of Bitcoin's whole decentralized nature.
They might resist, try to hold on to the old ways, even as the world is changing around them.
It could even lead to a kind of digital arms race, with countries competing to build up their own crypto reserves to gain an advantage.
It's like a new era of exploration. Everyone's trying to stake their claim in this new territory.
And then there's the impact on global trade, currencies, all of that.
Right. Adding a U.S. Bitcoin reserve could make things more complex, maybe more volatile.
It's like introducing a new species into an ecosystem. It could disrupt the balance.
Or it could thrive. We just don't know.
And what about the dollar? Could this challenge its dominance?
It's a possibility. If other countries start looking for alternatives, the whole system could shift.
The global financial system is so interconnected, it's like a delicate web.
It is. And even a small change can have massive repercussions.
The implications are huge, and it's really hard to predict what will happen.
Absolutely.
But one thing's clear, this wouldn't just be a U.S. thing.
Right. It would be a global phenomenon.
It would have ripple effects everywhere.
Exactly. It underscores that crypto is global by nature. It goes beyond borders. It challenges traditional ideas about control and sovereignty.
It's like the Internet of Finance.
I like that, the Internet of Finance.
Connecting people and markets in new ways.
And it all comes back to the power of blockchain technology. It's not just disrupting financial systems, it's reshaping geopolitics.
Wow, it's mind-boggling to think about how much could change.
It is. It's a lot to take in.
And for our listeners trying to make sense of it all, it must feel like standing on the edge of this vast, uncharted world.
It's an exciting time, that's for sure. We're witnessing the birth of a new era in finance, full of possibilities, but also a lot of challenges.
It's like a grand adventure with thrills and spills along the way, but the destination could be amazing.
Couldn't agree more.
So once again, it all comes back to staying informed.
Yes.
Engaging in these discussions, asking questions, challenging the status quo.
We can't predict the future, but we can prepare for it. Arm ourselves with knowledge and learn to think critically.
It's like learning to read a map.
Exactly. The more you understand the terrain, the better equipped you'll be to navigate it.
Okay, let's zoom back in a bit now.
Okay.
From the global scale to the individual,
Makes it.
how could a U.S. Bitcoin reserve affect everyday people?
Well, that's really what it all comes down to, right? Any big change in the financial system is going to have ripple effects that reach everyone eventually.
So let's break it down. What are some potential scenarios for the average person?
One possibility is that a U.S. Bitcoin reserve could lead to more people using cryptocurrencies in general.
Okay, interesting.
Think about it. If the government's holding Bitcoin, it kind of sends a signal that it's a legitimate asset, maybe even something worth investing in.
Like a seal of approval, right?
Exactly. And if more people start buying Bitcoin, the price could go up, which would be good for people who already own some.
But wouldn't that also make it harder for new people to get involved?
That's a valid point. But remember, the crypto market is super volatile.
Right, it's famous for that.
A price surge could easily be followed by a drop. So you have to be cautious, invest for the long term, not just try to make a quick buck.
It's like a roller coaster. There will be ups and downs, but if you focus on the big picture, you'll be all right.
Exactly. Don't get caught up in the day-to-day swings.
Now, beyond price changes, how else could a Bitcoin reserve affect people?
Well, it could lead to new financial products and services that are easier to use and more affordable.
Okay, like what?
We might see Bitcoin-backed loans, savings accounts, even payment systems that cut out the middleman.
It's like having a whole new set of tools for managing your money, tools that are more efficient, more transparent.
Exactly. And it could be a game changer for folks who haven't been well served by the traditional system.
And for businesses, could it create new opportunities?
It could, absolutely.
Yeah.
Job creation, economic growth, the possibilities are there.
So both positive and negative impacts. Hard to say exactly how it'll all shake out.
That's the thing with any big change, especially when it involves something as disruptive as Bitcoin.
It's like sailing into uncharted waters. There are bound to be surprises.
But hey, that's what makes it exciting, right? The journey is just as important as the destination.
But even with all the uncertainty, there's this feeling of, I don't know, excitement, like we're on the verge of something really big.
It feels like a new era's beginning, right before our eyes. Full of potential, but we need to tread carefully, think things through.
We're at a crossroads.
We are, for sure. The choices we make today will have consequences for years to come.
Okay, we've covered so much.
A lot.
The potential benefits, the risks, the global implications, even the ethical considerations.
We've really gone deep.
We have, but there's one more crucial element we need to talk about.
Okay, what's that?
Ethics.
You're right. We can't just focus on the tech and the money. We got to think about the ethical side of all this, too.
Absolutely. So what are some of the ethical questions we should be asking as we consider a U.S. Bitcoin reserve?
Well, one concern is that it could make inequality worse. If the people who already have money and access to technology are the ones driving Bitcoin adoption.
Right, it's already a problem.
Exactly. We need to make sure that any Bitcoin reserve benefits everyone, not just a select few.
It's like building a bridge, right? You want to make sure everyone can cross it, not just the people who can afford the toll.
Perfect analogy. And then there's the environmental impact. We can't forget about that.
The energy consumption, the carbon footprint.
Right. Bitcoin mining uses a lot of energy, which raises concerns about sustainability and climate change.
It's a valid concern.
It is. The industry is working on solutions, moving towards more efficient mining methods, using renewable energy, all that.
It's a work in progress.
It is. But it's important to have these conversations, to acknowledge the downsides and look for ways to do things better.
Finding a balance between innovation and responsibility.
Exactly. And then there's the whole privacy and security issue.
Oh, right.
Bitcoin transactions are pseudonymous, which can be good for privacy, but it also raises concerns about illegal activities.
A double-edged sword.
It is. We have to protect privacy, but we also have to make sure the system isn't being used for the wrong reasons.
It's like designing a house. You want windows for light, but you also need strong locks to keep the bad guys out.
Perfect analogy. And let's not forget about human error. Security breaches, those are always a risk.
Especially with something as valuable as Bitcoin.
We need strong security measures, education, and people need to be responsible for how they're storing and managing their Bitcoin.
So it's clear that this isn't just about the economics or the technology. We need to approach this with a strong ethical framework.
Absolutely. We need to ask tough questions, weigh the pros and cons, make sure any decisions are aligned with our values.
Building a future we can be proud of.
Exactly. A future that reflects our best intentions.
Well said. Okay, I think it's time to step back and recap what we've learned.
Okay, good idea.
It's been a lot to process, a real whirlwind of information.
It has. It's helpful to pause and synthesize all the key takeaways.
All right, so what are the main points our listeners should walk away with? What's the essence of this whole story?
Well, first thing is, this whole idea of a U.S. Bitcoin reserve, it's not some crazy fringe idea anymore.
It's moving into the mainstream.
It is. And there are a lot of factors driving that. More people are using Bitcoin, some politicians are supportive, and there's a growing realization that it has real potential benefits.
We've got betting markets predicting it, states exploring it, even big investors like Dan Tapiero advocating for it.
Yeah, the conversation has definitely shifted.
It's not about if anymore, it's when and how.
Exactly. But, as we've discussed, it's not a simple issue. There's a lot to consider, economically, geopolitically, regulatory, and ethically.
So many layers.
It's like a puzzle with a lot of missing pieces.
We've talked about financial inclusion, faster payments, hedging against inflation, but also the risks of volatility, security breaches, and making inequality worse.
It's all about balance, right?
Right.
Weighing the good and the bad.
Trying to find a path that leads to a better future for everyone.
And we can't forget the environmental impact. Finding sustainable solutions is crucial.
Absolutely. It's about innovation, but also responsibility.
Well said. We also went deep into the regulatory landscape, the SEC's role, those key legal cases that are shaping the future of crypto.
And now, with Gary Gensler leaving, we're all waiting to see what direction the SEC will take under the new administration.
It's a critical moment. It could determine whether crypto thrives or struggles in the U.S.
And then there's the global aspect, right?
Yeah.
The potential for a U.S. Bitcoin reserve to disrupt power dynamics, challenge the dollar, and create this whole new financial order.
It's a global phenomenon, no doubt about it. What happens in one part of the world affects everyone else.
And throughout all of this, we've stressed how important it is to stay informed, ask questions, and think critically.
Don't just be a passive observer. Be an active participant.
The future of finance is being written right now, and we all have a role to play.
We do. It's like a blank canvas. We have the opportunity to create something better, more inclusive, more sustainable.
Powerful words to end on.
I hope so.
We've laid a solid foundation here, but the conversation is far from over.
Oh, absolutely. There's still so much to explore and debate.
But I think by having these discussions, sharing knowledge, we can empower ourselves to make good decisions about our financial futures.
Couldn't agree more. Stay curious, stay informed, stay engaged.
Okay, let's take a short break to gather our thoughts, and then we'll come back for the final stretch of our deep dive into a U.S. Bitcoin reserve. Okay, we've explored a lot about this idea of a U.S. Bitcoin reserve, the potential upside, the risks, the global picture, even the ethical questions.
We've been through a lot.
We have. But now, let's get practical.
Yeah.
Let's say this does happen. A U.S. Bitcoin reserve becomes reality. How should our listeners approach investing in crypto?
The million-dollar question, right? Unfortunately, there's no magic formula. It's different for everyone.
Right.
It depends on how much risk you're comfortable with, your financial goals, how well you understand the market.
I get that. No one-size-fits-all answer.
Yeah.
But are there any general tips you can give? It's like, we're setting sail for a new world here. We need a compass, a map, something.
Okay, first things first, and I can't stress this enough, do your research.
Mm-hmm.
Don't just jump in because everyone else is talking about it. Understand Bitcoin, the tech behind it, what makes the price go up or down. It's like learning a new language. You got to know the basics.
Knowledge is power, especially in the crypto world.
Absolutely. Don't fall for hype. Don't get swept up in the FOMO. Make informed decisions.
Okay, what else?
Diversify, diversify, diversify. Don't put all your eggs in the Bitcoin basket, no matter how tempting it seems.
Okay, spread the risk.
Exactly. Look at other cryptocurrencies, even traditional assets. Balance is key. It's like building a house. You need different materials to make it strong.
That makes sense. Okay, but what about the timing? Should people try to time the market, buy low, sell high, all that?
Oh boy, that's a dangerous game. Crypto is so volatile. Trying to time it is a recipe for, well, usually losing money.
Okay, so what's the alternative?
Develop a long-term strategy. Invest in projects you believe in. Be prepared to hold even when things get bumpy. It's like planting a tree. You don't expect it to grow overnight.
Patience is a virtue, especially in crypto.
Absolutely. And one more thing, and this is really important. Never invest more than you can afford to lose.
Right.
Crypto is still speculative. There's a lot of risk involved. Treat it like a high-risk investment. Only put in what you're comfortable potentially saying goodbye to.
It's like going on an adventure. You pack enough supplies to be prepared, but you don't bet your house on it.
Exactly. Excitement is good, but don't let it cloud your judgment.
So, to sum it all up, research, Diversify, long-term thinking, and don't bet the farm.
You got it. Those are the guiding principles, whether we see a U.S. Bitcoin reserve or not.
Empowering people to make their own choices in this crazy, exciting new world.
That's what it's all about. Learn the basics, ride the waves. Who knows what the future holds?
I like that. Ride the waves. Well, what a deep dive this has been.
It has. We've covered so much ground.
The potential, the challenges, the global impact, the ethics, everything. It's a complex topic, no doubt.
It really is, and constantly changing.
But that's what makes it so fascinating, right?
Yeah.
To our listeners, I want to leave you with this. Don't just watch this revolution from the sidelines. Get involved, ask questions, make your voice heard. The future is being written right now, and you can be a part of it.
So well said. Stay curious, keep exploring, and until next time, happy investing.
We'll see you next time, folks, for another deep dive into the world of crypto.